I'm Lloyd Holiday, and this is the Cost of a Thing podcast. Thanks for listening in today. So what happened to that great standard of living that we used to enjoy here in America in the 1960s and even into the 1970s? Well, that's what the Cost of a Thing podcast is all about, and that's what I'm going to be talking about here. Okay, today I'm going to do another podcast on 1960s technology versus the technology of today. And I did part one a week or two ago, and that is podcast number 63. And I mainly talked about three different things: phones, audio and video recording devices. The third thing was cars. So if you're interested in that, you can look at podcast 63. And I'm doing this, especially for the young people who think, man, how did they get by back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and even the 80s without personal computers and the internet and all of these things that we have today? Well, we got along without all of that just fine, and in many ways it was actually better than today. There's really not that many big advantages, as I'll try to point out along the way, of all this technology today. It's a different way of doing things, but not necessarily a better way. And today I want to talk about three more technologies, and those are right up on the screen there. Number one is ratings for restaurants and lodging, hotels, motels, etc. Number two is ordering things in the 1960s and 70s versus ordering things today. Number three is other information. Where did we get our information back in the 60s and 70s? And I'm trying to just do three technologies per podcast because I don't want these things to get too long. I like to keep them under 10 minutes. Okay, first is ratings of things, ratings of food, lodging, and even other things. Today, there's many websites that can go on to and look up the different ratings on restaurants, motels, and hotels. Well, it wasn't hard to find that either back in the 60s and 70s. And there on the screen is one way we did it. And I use this guide. This is my guide. I pulled it out of my bookshelf. It's from 1980, the Mobile Travel Guide. And it was put out by the oil company Mobil, as you can see the insignia there. And I bought this back in 1980. It was $5.95. It says it's for the region California in the West. It's got, as you can see there, Arizona, California, Nevada, and Utah. And it's got best restaurants and hotels in every city, and every, at least even minor cities are in there. If you're going to a town like Las Vegas or Los Angeles or even small towns, you can go in the book and find that town, and it'll give you the top restaurants, and it'll rate them from 1 star to 5 stars, and it gives a check if it has a good value on it too. So we didn't have any problem back in the 60s and 70s and 80s finding good restaurants and places to stay in hotels. So today you just look it up on the computer. Back then you got a book problem. And this was rated by professionals, which I think it might be even a little better than the ones we have today on the computer where it's rated just by regular guys. It doesn't really mean as much to me because you can't really tell as well when it's just rated by regular people. I don't think. If it truly is a good restaurant or the food is good or the type of food you eat there may not be as good as the type of food somebody else is getting there. So I find the professionally rated ones, like in the Mobile Travel Guide here, are better ratings than just the ones you see online from regular people rating them that went there and ate. Now, some towns you'll see on the internet, Taco Bell is given like 3 or 4 stars. I've seen it. I've seen that in some towns. Like, oh, really? Is that a 4-star restaurant? I don't think so. And there were other books like this out there. Okay, the second big thing that we do today is we do a lot of ordering online from various stores, from Amazon, all over the place. You're ordering online, and it's very easy. You go in there and sign in, put your email address and your address, put your credit card in, you get the stuff, and it's sent right out. Sometimes Amazon sends it out in a couple of days. What did we have in the old days? We had mail order catalogs, which basically operated the same way. You had, big stores like Sears and Penny's, which are, many of them are still around today, and they had catalogs. And there's also a specialty catalog. Say you're interested in, landscaping equipment or something like that. They'd have a special catalog you could get. And, you'd have to order it up, call them and tell them you wanted it. Just about any specialty area you could think of, they had catalogs that you could order, mail order catalogs, and get them. And then you could look through there and you could order this stuff. And basically you'd call them up, tell them the item you wanted, give them your credit card number, and then they would mail it out to you. Or you could even send a check in to them and specify a little mailing form and specify what you wanted. And so we basically had the same thing. It was a little just a different way of doing it. So I don't, go think, wow, it's so great we have this stuff today on the internet. We had the same thing back then. It was just done differently. And the last one there, number 3, is information. How did we get information? Now you can go on the internet and type anything in on multiple different search engines, and you pretty much find the same thing on every one of them, and you'll find some information. Well, you don't know if it's exactly true, and you can look at various places to see if it kind of adds up and everybody says the same thing about it, but you really don't know how good that information is on the internet today. Now, in the old days, where did we get our information? We'd go to the library. You'd go down there and you'd find books on various topics, and you'd read about it until you found what you wanted. And that might have been a little more reliable than what you're getting today. But, you had to check whether that was reliable in the books too, and you'd verify it and maybe look in several different books. So it's not like now we have all this super information out there. And maybe there's too much information out there now. See, you don't know what to look at. You don't know what to believe. There's so many things going on out there on the internet. There is a lot of how-to videos there, but there were how-to books you could get to find the same thing. I never had a problem finding information on how to do something, or any information really. So, today we think this is so great, we have all this information. Well, we always had information. It was just in a different place. It wasn't in the computer. It was at the library. So I'm going to wrap this up, and basically I'll say that the old days, we got all this stuff done. It's not like we were going, oh my God, how can we find out what's a good restaurant to eat in? I don't see any great advantages from any of the 3 things I talk about today on this video that has really improved our lives that much. It's just a different way of doing it. Some other companies making a lot of money. New companies making a lot of money. The old ones with the books fell by the wayside. So I just don't see that these things, the new technologies, and at least in these areas I talked about today, have really improved our standard of living. As I talk about on my website all the time, our standard of living is lower today than it was back in the 60s and 70s. So somehow these things are not helping. They may be hindering it. But back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, we knew where the good restaurants were. We knew where the good hotels were and the resorts. We knew how to order stuff. We got stuff. Everything we wanted, we got it. It was either at the stores locally, or you could order it through a mail order catalog and get it. And as far as information, we had plenty of information. It was all in the library. There were huge libraries. Every town has one. And if you have a university in your town, then there's a huge library in that university. Multiple factors of more information than you could ever absorb. Thank you for listening in today. And until next time, this is Lloyd Holliday signing off.